Yes, 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 yes. Hello, everybody. Um, uh, I figured I'd stream again. Oh, somebody's here already. Wow, that was quick. Yeah, I figured I'd stream again, and since the last stream was very politically charged, I figured let's do something a bit more lighthearted again. So I got this video by Patrick H. Willems about Zack Snyder. And we're just gonna watch like a little bit. And if I don't have anything to say about it, then I have another video backed up. But if we do, or if I do, that's great. But yeah, first, just briefly, I wanted to talk about what a fucking amazing year it's been for music so far, at least for me. Like, we had my favorite artist ever released like 2 albums already this year, and is gonna release 2 more, which I didn't like a lot of what he put out since like 2019, 2018, but uh he isn't with his label anymore, and now I love it. I love the music again, which is great. Then we have another artist that I've been following for like 10 years now, called Mauli. He's a German artist who released like his best album this year, Cinepop. It is in German, but if you like interesting like kind of merging of different genres, like kind of cinematic, kind of dramatic as well. It's insane. It's really good. I would recommend it. And then recently, when was it? Like a month or two ago, James Blake and Lil Yachty released an album, which is fucking unbelievable. It's like, ooh, I've been listening to this album for like the last week nonstop, and it's just really beautiful. Like the production is really interesting, really beautiful. It's the like how the songs and the album itself like develop over time. It's now like part hook, part hook. It's more like almost like a story in a way. Uh, like there's like a build up of tension, and there's a climax. It's yeah. Yeah, I like it a lot. But that's just as a little aside. Uh, I should have written some stuff down because I had a lot of shit to say about it, but I forgot pretty much everything. So we're just gonna change to the video now. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, there we are. Ba 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 ba. Oh, and if somebody is watching right now and is in chat and could maybe tell me how the levels are, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, let's just get into it. Oh, and it's a long one. It's an hour and 17 minutes, so.
This episode is brought to you by Curiosity Stream and Nebula, where you can watch the extended versions of this and every other episode this season. Hi, this is a quick disclaimer for anyone who would consider themselves a big Zack Snyder fan. So if you have
That's not me, so nothing to worry about so far.
hashtag Restore the Snyderverse, our associate producer of Zack Snyder's Justice League, anywhere in your social media profiles, and you happen to be watching this video, this message is for you. Over the next 40 to 60 minutes, I will be discussing Zack Snyder's work and will inevitably criticize aspects of it. There is a good chance that you will disagree with some of my opinions. Now, I have no agenda here other than to explore the work of a filmmaker who I admittedly have mixed feelings about, but who I think is genuinely interesting.
Okay, like Oh, he is? Okay. Thank you. I'll fix that then. If you could tell me afterwards if it's better, that would be great. Um, yeah. I cannot put him louder, myself louder, because I'm already peaking here. But yeah. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. What was I gonna say? Right. I'm already a little bit annoyed with this disclaimer. Like, you're making a video. Obviously, you're gonna criticize him, and the people who like need this little baby cradling thing are not really worth the time, I feel. But yeah. Okay.
The fact is, Snyder is a major filmmaker in our current cinema landscape, and he deserves to be taken seriously. And that means engaging with his work on a deep, critical level. I have no personal beef with Zack Snyder. By all accounts, he's a really nice guy. Me not liking some of his movies is not a personal attack on him.
That seems obvious.
I also, other than right now in this sentence, am not going to mention Joss Whedon. He is not relevant to this discussion, so please do not accuse me of being on his side or anything like that. The point of all of this is that if you think you might have a bad time watching this video, you can totally just turn it off now.
Yeah, again, yeah, obviously, but like, are you afraid of, like, is he afraid of people being mean to him, like harassing him, or is he just afraid of criticism on his video that's criticizing somebody? Like, I don't know, just get into the argument. I don't get all this, like, yeah, I don't see the point of this.
Don't waste your time watching something that's going to make you mad. It's not worth it. All right, that's all. Let's get to the video.
Okay, thank you. Perfect.
So you come back after 2 years of being on an island, and the first thing you want to
Oh
make
no.
is Zack Snyder? Could you not think of anything less controversial? Look, I had the team put together a list of video ideas for you, and I think you might like some of these. Hanyo's favorite food, an exploration. Ranking the films of Ben's...
Do we need, like, this video is already so long. Do we need, like, cringe segments, like, scripted, like... Oh, come on. Just get into it, please. Yes, I know that he put a timestamp on the video, but this is part of it too. I'm not gonna skip it, but...
The rest of these are all about Batman. Look, the point is nobody is going to get mad at any of these videos.
Look, these all sound like a ton of fun, but long story short, the Snyder video was set up on Patreon by other Patrick.
Oh, right. Maybe it should be good for me to, like, state my opinion on Zack Snyder. I do not think he is very talented at what he does at all. I do like Batman vs. Superman for, like, purely superficial reasons. Well, I like the acting in it. I like the ideas that are, like, hinted at with Batman, but it's like all his movies, it's badly written. It's really yeah, all his movies are, like, needlessly edgy. Yeah, I'm not a big fan, is kind of the point.
The Snyder video is a Patreon goal?
Yeah, apparently they hit it a while ago. Why? Is there a problem?
How closely did you read the fine print?
There's fine print?
Ooh, okay, this is bad.
What?
So other Patrick put in a stipulation that if he, or I guess you, didn't follow through on the video, that every one of your patrons would get to, and I'm quoting here, beat your silly ass with a big hunk of wood.
Wait, they can't expect me to honor that.
It's Patreon, dude. They can and they will. This is a legally binding contract. Right, Legal?
It's true.
Oh god, it really does say big hunk of wood.
I'm sorry, I don't have much to say here. It's just
try to get to know the...
I'm just trying to get through it.
But I'm gonna be honest, I'm not super comfortable repping you with this particular cloud over your head.
Wait, but aren't you already my agent?
Actually, that's not super clear. Good Patrick, evil Patrick, it's kind of a gray area. I'm not really, you know what? I just don't want to get hit with a big hunk of wood. know it's a lot. And if you need anything, then maybe I can help out on, let's call it, an interim basis.
I mean, I'm kind of between workspaces right now. Could I shoot the video here?
Oh, yeah, that's easy. Here, just gotta wear this.
Okay.
Does it have to be so condescending?
Yes.
Oh yeah, the music in his DC movies. Except for the Snyder Cut, is pretty good too.
Okay, might as well just rip this Band-Aid off. If you watched the last episode, you know that the other me, as in the asshole who stranded me on a deserted island for a year and a half, then
I
got
don't
me evicted
care.
and left me in debt, decided to add insult to injury by dropping this on me. If I seem less than thrilled, it's not because I have anything against Zack Snyder. It's because talking about Zack Snyder on the internet, kind of like, actually a lot like talking about Star Wars, is a great way to make your life more miserable. The thing about Zack Snyder, in my personal opinion, is that he exists in the wrong...
I'm sorry, I'm just so annoyed by all this. Like, you wanted to make the video, so just make the video. Don't come here and tell like, oh, I'm making my life miserable, and oh, I don't really want to do this, and oh, if you don't like it, then it's fine, and you don't have to watch it, and I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes. Yeah, toys. Like, dude, just, you wanted to make the video, and don't bother me with all this fluff.
era. Before his move to feature films, he worked for over a decade as a very successful director of music videos and commercials, specializing in...
Oh yeah, this is something I always... this is something I thought, like, during his DC era, I would love for him to, like, direct a music video of mine. But with his more recent work, with the awful cinematography, I'm not so sure anymore.
Slick, iconic imagery. Remember that post 9/11 Budweiser Super Bowl commercial with the Clydesdale
No.
horses bowing to the New York skyline? That was a Zack Snyder joint. I've always felt like he would make more sense working in the late 80s or 90s, when directors more known for their striking visuals than storytelling abilities, at least initially, like David Fincher, Michael Bay, Russell Mulcahy, Dominic Sena, Alex Proyas, or Antoine Fuqua, were the ones that Hollywood would look to handle their big action movies. Like, imagine Zack Snyder directing Highlander. It makes sense. Instead, he arrived on the scene in the mid-2000s.
Okay.
This was the beginning of a new era, when the big Hollywood action vehicles were moving away from movies like Armageddon or Face Off and towards franchises based on existing properties. And now the director's chosen to handle those...
I'm just gonna trust him in this. I'm not... it seems right to me. I don't know.
Movies were usually ones with a background in like small indie dramas. And yet, Snyder succeeded, for a brief time even becoming the architect of a massive big screen superhero movie universe. And in the landscape of modern American mainstream cinema, no one's movies look or feel quite like Zack Snyder's.
That is true, I think. I think he has like his own kind of style, I feel. Although again, his last few movies, like Army of the Dead, was it? Yeah, it was Army of the Dead, and Rebel Moon bullshit. Like the ones where he doesn't have a cinematographer anymore, he does the cinematography himself. I feel like you can still like see his style for sure, but it's gotten worse. Like, people say his movies looked bad before that. I can see the argument for that. I like the way, like, for example, BVS looks, but it's gotten way worse. Like, the extremely like narrow focus of Army of the Dead is awful. Like the CGI in Rebel Moon is awful. Like it all looks like considerably worse.
One of the very few directors working in modern franchise blockbusters who actually has a distinct aesthetic, tone, and worldview that you can spot a mile away. Which
Worldview. Doesn't worldview, that says that's not really a visual thing. That's more like like beliefs, right? I don't really see how that connects. Or is it, can you also use it in the visual sense? I'm not sure.
brings us to the first installment in a recurring segment that I have added to protect myself.
Can we stop now already? Like, holy shit. He's so scared of backlash.
He often has great casting instincts. So much of
Let's see. Ben Affleck as Batman was great. Henry Cavill as Superman was great. The whole casting in Watchmen was pretty good too. The whole casting in 300, I feel like, was pretty good too. Gal Gadot was a huge ass mistake. But yeah, off the top of my head, it's pretty okay. I don't really like the actor for Cyborg, but Ezra Miller. Ezra Miller. Like, let's not talk about him as a person or them as a person, but for the kind of character Zack Snyder was going for with Flash, even though I don't like that direction, Ezra Miller makes Ezra Miller plays that well, I guess. Yeah.
the discussion around Zack Snyder focuses on his visuals, or the plots of his movies, that people rarely discuss the performances. And this totally ignores the fact that Snyder really, really likes working with actors and has consistently made cool, unexpected casting decisions.
Yeah, but I guess so. But like the script, the writing is like the most fundamental thing about a movie. At least I feel so, because every aspect of a movie is there to support the script, right? Like it's trying to tell a story like first. So it makes sense to talk about that first, right? Especially when there's so much to criticize about that, or so much to say about that.
This starts way back in Dawn of the Dead, when he cast Sarah Polley in the lead role, one of the very few mainstream genre movies that she ever appeared in. Before 300, Gerard Butler was just that bad singer who got cast as the Phantom of the Opera. Snyder made him a movie star, and hey, love it or hate it, but I can't imagine anyone pulling off lines like "Tonight we dine in hell" like he does. Jackie Earle Haley as
Sure.
Rorschach is genuinely inspired casting.
Yeah.
Snyder was the first filmmaker smart enough to let Oscar Isaac sing and dance on screen, and he wasn't even famous yet. Look, we all mocked Batfleck when it was announced, but he turned out to be a surprisingly good choice, even if I don't really like the movie's take on that character.
Yeah, I do kind of like the general direction he went with it. I like the conceited old Batman, but that's just me, I guess. And I do think Affleck played that depiction of the character pretty well, I gotta say.
And I gotta mention this. There is a contingent of people
Like, the fact that we never got a good Ben Affleck Batman movie still makes me sad. I would have loved to see that.
out there, to be clear, they're idiots, who celebrate Snyder for supposedly making anti-woke movies. Because in our dumb-as-hell current world, woke means casting people who are not white in a movie.
Oh, who fucking cares? Like, neither side of this discussion has anything of value to say. At least he doesn't, and like the big voices on the other side don't either, so who cares?
But this is objectively false. In Man of Steel, Snyder cast Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White,
Oh, that was a good casting decision as well.
character who has always been portrayed as white. He cast Harry Lennox as Martian Manhunter, who is an alien, but traditionally, when he takes human form, appears as a white man. And Jesus Christ, guys, he cast Jason Momoa, a Hawaiian Polynesian actor, as Aquaman, who is one of the most Aryan-looking superheroes in all of
I don't care. Can we move on?
comics. So I'm sorry to break it to you, racist people on the internet, but Zack
Oh yeah, that's great. Okay. I'm not even part of that crowd. Like, I don't like those people, but can we just like let's just talk about their arguments. Let's talk about what they actually have to say instead of still going on the, oh, you're all just racist, because some of them might be, sure, but that's not really. Yeah, that doesn't really further the discussion at all.
Snyder has been doing that progressive race-bending casting that you hate so much for years. For the past 5 or so years, almost all of the discussion around Snyder has focused on the film Justice League, the 4-hour director's cut of which was finally released last year after a, let's say, contentious journey. But despite
Yeah. I mean, I'm still of the opinion it's like good that we got that out and everything. It's nice that we could see it out, but it was a shit show, and it was way worse than the actual Justice League, like the cinematic release, which was awful too. Yeah.
the number of times the words Snyder Cut have been written and published on the internet, I don't think that film is the key to unlocking who Zack Snyder is. So sure, we'll...
Yeah, no, because well, there is something to be said about Zack Snyder from that film, but it's not like his like unadulterated vision of a movie at all. Like, so much of this is clearly like clearly in response to like the cinematic version, and the cinematic version in like per se. Yeah. It's not what he or the fans make it out to be at all.
Justice League, but it is only a very small part of the larger picture. The truth is that Zack Snyder is an unlikely figure to rise to the status he currently holds. He's an odd fusion of Michael Bay, David Fincher, and a Frank Frazetta painting. Even with his biggest blockbusters,
I'm sorry, I missed that.
but it is only a very small part of the larger picture. The truth is that Zack Snyder is an unlikely figure to rise to the status he currently holds. He's an odd fusion of Michael...
True, because he's really bad at what he does. Like, it's insane to me that people still, like, that he still gets to make the movies he gets to make. Like, that's insane to me. I need to take off my sweater quickly. 1 sec. And I'm back. Okay.
A David Fincher and a Frank Frazetta painting. Even with his biggest blockbusters,
He's what?
currently holds. He's an odd fusion of Michael Bay, David Fincher, and a Frank Frazetta painting.
Okay, who is Frank Frazetta? Ah, oops. Didn't even spell it correctly. Okay. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. David Fincher, Michael Bay, and this? Okay, sure.
Even with his biggest blockbusters, he has never made a movie that was not divisive. So how did he get here?
Sure.
What
He has also never made a movie that's not bad.
do his movies tell us about him? Why do his movies resonate so strongly with some people? And what's the deal with
That's a
all that
great
slow
question.
motion? Well, those questions are why we are here today. And also because we hit a Patreon goal, and unlike some other Patrick Willemses, I'm not a jerk who flees the country and leaves other people to clean up my mess. So please,
Good for you. I don't
keep me
care.
in your thoughts and prayers, because it's time to, drumroll please, release the Snyder vid. Yo.
Ha.
Zack Snyder's career began, as previously mentioned, in the world of slick, big-budget commercials and music videos. And like many directors of slick, big-budget commercials and music videos in the early 2000s, Zack Snyder transitioned to feature films by taking on a remake of a classic horror movie.
Okay.
Seriously.
Like, I don't... What is there to say about that? Good for him? Good for you to make that connection? I don't... Like, who else? I guess, maybe... I don't know, what was Michael Bay's first movie? Maybe Michael Bay? I don't know.
Were a lot of
Maybe I'm just not educated on this enough, but...
those back then. His 2004 Dawn of the Dead remake, with a script by James Gunn, is definitely one of the better horror remakes of the 2000s.
I haven't seen that. Is that worth watching at all?
While it loses the satire and social commentary of George Romero's original film, it still provides plenty of visceral thrills and some truly memorable sequences, particularly the great opening 10 minutes where the movie just goes ridiculously hard right out the gate. It's awesome. So Snyder's career was off to a strong start, and here is where he made a smart decision. Instead of
Okay. Was it off to a strong start? The Dawn of the Dead remake? Dawn of the Dead. Zack Snyder. There we go. Yeah. Okay. 7.3? Yeah, sure. That's I haven't seen it, so I can't say, but I guess it. Yeah, I guess people liked it. Did it make money? I'd guess so, right? Budget 26 million, opening weekend 26 million, gross worldwide 102 million. Okay, I feel like that's pretty successful. Oh, okay. Bye, Chan. Thanks for watching. See you soon. I hope. You too. Yeah, I guess that's pretty successful, right? 20 yeah, like 26 million doubled up for marketing, 52 million. That still is like it still is like 50 million. Yeah. That seems okay, I guess. I don't know.
doing what a lot of those other horror remake directors like Marcus Nispel or Alexander Aja did, and stick around in the horror world, often struggling to recapture the success of their breakthrough film, Snyder used his new clout to get a passion project made, an adaptation of the Frank Miller graphic novel 300. Now, what's strange about 300 is that it was treated as this visionary film that reinvented comic book and action cinema, when essentially what Snyder did was replicate exactly what Robert Rodriguez had done 2 years earlier. With Sin City, Rodriguez took a Frank Miller comic book and recreated it panel for panel on screen, shooting the whole thing on green screens so as to replicate the exaggerated, stylized imagery of the source.
Haven't seen God damn it, dude. Haven't seen Sin City either, but I've heard good things about it. Yeah, I'm trying to set something up here, but we'll keep watching.
Material. And that's what Snyder did. Another comic book, also by Frank Miller, again shooting it all on green screens with minimal sets,
Yeah.
and again using the original panels as storyboards. So why did 300 make Snyder such a big deal when he was really just doing the same thing someone else had already done? Well, it probably helped that 300 had...
I haven't seen the movie in a while, so I don't know, but I mean, if it's good, right? Who cares if it's like in concept similar to other movies? Like, that seems weird, like a weird thing to say. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Seems weird to me, but okay. Yeah. Wait, sorry. Kind of lost my track of thought, but I'm back. Here we go.
stronger narrative hook, since Sin City was kind of an anthology film with multiple stories in it. Also, it must be said, 300 had one of the greatest trailers of all time. But either way, the movie was an enormous hit. So then Warner Brothers forged a partnership with Snyder, and for the next 14 years, he would make all of his movies there. Since he nailed this one big comic book adaptation, he moved on to tackle the biggest one of them all. Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' Watchmen.
Yeah.
A revolutionary deconstruction of the superhero genre.
Okay, we'll talk about this in a sec. I need to set something up, then I'll... Yeah. I will go... Okay, just give me a sec, okay? Sorry. Okay. This is good enough. Okay. Yeah, yeah, it's a bit fucked, but it's good enough. I need to go pee. I'm gonna leave you with a song that I uploaded like 4 years ago, but it's thematically relevant because it's a sample from a Zack Snyder movie. Yeah, see you in a sec.
There was a time above, a time there were perfect things, diamond and sweets. Things fall, things on earth, and what falls is fallen.
I've spent my whole life running away. We've spent our whole lives hiding away, hiding from the pain. Beside some scars, what did we gain? I've spent my whole life pushing away. We've spent our whole lives pushing away the ones we love the most. We're nothing more than a ghost. Do them right now. We've spent our whole lives trying to be someone else, not even knowing how to be ourselves. We should have noticed by now that we are not alive. I don't even know what it is a life worth living, but that came to us as we grew older, Dad. One day we might be fine, but it's probably nothing more than a beautiful life. Oh, it's a beautiful life. Please tell me I'm not right. Please tell me we'll really fight, because I need to believe in this beautiful life.
Okay, and I'm back. I'll let it play out quickly. Ooh, doo, doo. Okay, and I'll transition. Okay. Yes. Let's get back into the video.
To tackle the biggest one of them all. Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' Watchmen, the revolutionary deconstruction of the superhero genre that for decades has been widely hailed as the greatest comic book of all time. And
I mean, yeah, it is pretty great. The fuck? Wait, I'm kind of confused. 1 second. I don't know why it's flickering out. What the fuck's happening? I'm confused. Help, 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 help. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, let's just keep going. Yeah, it's a really good comic. I haven't read it in a while, but yeah, I don't have really much about to say about it that hasn't been said before, so I guess we'll just keep going.
that countless directors, from Terry Gilliam to Paul Greengrass to Darren Aronofsky, had previously tried and failed to make into a movie. Well, Snyder was the guy who finally did it. Warner's gave him a massive budget, allowed him to make the movie extremely long, and in the trailers they announced that Snyder was now a visionary director. While he didn't shoot it all on green screen,
Oh my god, Zack Snyder's vision. It started back then. Holy shit.
like he did for 300, on Watchmen, Snyder used the same general approach of adapting the source material as literally as possible, taking nearly every shot directly from a panel in the book, like he used most of Alan Moore's original dialogue.
Yes, but it's like considerably darker. Like not in tone necessarily, but in actual like darkness, I guess.
And once again, it was tough to see if Snyder had an actual vision or take on the material beyond just film the comic in live action.
Yeah.
Now look, some people love Snyder.
I mean, it is that, but at the same time, verse, which, like, it seems to me that he doesn't get the material he's pulling from most of the time. Yeah.
Watchmen. Roger Ebert thought it was brilliant. He gave it 4 stars. But the reviews were mixed. The box office was kind of disappointing considering how big the budget was, and some were starting to
Wait. Let me look at these numbers. Okay, but where's the budget? Why don't you... Wait. This can't be this hard, right? Okay, Watchmen 2009. IMDb. There we go. Wait, I need to check something. 1 second. Okay, I guess the YouTube, like my YouTube studio page is just weird. It always shows me like screens. Sorry, oops, screens from later, like earlier in the stream, which was kind of confusing to me. But oh, that's why. Okay, yeah, okay, we're all good. Okay, I wanted to see the box office. And the budget. Where's the budget? 130 estimated. Ooh, oh no, that's not great. Oh no. Okay, that's yeah. But like that's like important. Why wouldn't you?
Kind of disappointing considering how big the budget was, and some were starting to
Okay,
wonder
sorry for those who didn't see it. It's 130 million estimated budget, and it made 158 worldwide, which that's not good. That doesn't even cover marketing, probably.
if we'd been a little hasty in proclaiming this guy the next great mainstream auteur. Whoops, okay, looks like we were getting a little bit too critical there, so it's time
Oh,
to swing
fuck
things back in
off.
the other direction with another installment of... He actually understands the importance of powerful imagery. In the past, I have bemoaned...
Okay, like from... I haven't seen that one movie. The... fuck, what's it called? The one where the girl is like... is like a prostitute, but doesn't know it or something. I haven't seen that movie, but like most of his movies are like adaptations from comics, at least the ones I've seen. And those, like, as you said, literally pulled imagery from the page, which is cool and all, but like that's imagery that he just took. That's not his imagery, right? Is it clear what I'm trying to say?
the lack of powerful, stylized iconography in modern superhero movies. Like the Burton and Schumacher Batman movies, they got it. The Mask of Zorro, that got it. But modern ones, they tend to not really get it. Either the visuals are focused on naturalism and realism, and they shy away from overly...
Okay, but I mean, say about the Nolan trilogy what do you want. There's stuff to criticize for sure. But there's some beautiful imagery in that. Like when in Batman Begins, when he is in the Himalayas, I think, to train, there's like beautiful shots of that. Beautiful shots of the city as well. Like that seems like, just because it's not as stylized, that seems a bit
posed shots, or their visual styles are just too bland to create...
I feel like, yeah, you can criticize more about the MCU movies, but even there's like some great imagery. For example, of course the first Doctor Strange movie has like really nice visuals, really interesting stuff as well. Then in Homecoming, there's like the scene where he is in the car with Liz and Vulture, and with lighting of the traffic lights, that there's some really interesting stuff to be said about that. Like, yeah, there's some blandness for sure in the MCU, especially now, but even before that. But let's not act like there's nothing there.
Any memorable images. But Snyder, he gets it. Honestly, he might get it a bit too much since his movies are like 70% people posing. But he fundamentally...
And then with Snyder, like... like in the Snyder cut, right? Where they just walk up the stairs for like, I think it's a good 1 or 2 minutes. That's not... like, first of all, that's really superfluous, but also it doesn't look great. Like all the shots that are clearly not meant to be in 4:3 look... a lot of them look pretty bad. Like, the placement isn't right. And then again, like his newer movies where he doesn't have a cinematographer, those are awful looking. So I
understands that when you need to sell these larger-than-life heroic figures to the audience, sometimes one great iconic shot that looks like a comic book cover come to life is the best way to do.
that looks kind of shit. Fuck. Okay, that looks even sillier than I initially thought. Like, dude, the statue that's just a skull. I haven't even noticed that before. But that looks really bad, like really stupid. And Batman looks kind of weird too. Like his face is very funny.
But the real test lay ahead. Until now, Snyder had only made adaptations of existing works. He had not yet made an original movie. So what does a Zack Snyder film look like removed from the weight of trying to faithfully translate Frank Miller or Alan Moore? The answer was Sucker Punch.
Right, Sucker
his
Punch.
2011 movie about hot girls imprisoned in a psychiatric hospital, featuring Dream World stacked on Dream World with giant gun-wielding samurai, armies of robots, World War I zombie soldiers, and dragons. Like every Snyder movie, it has its defenders, but Sucker Punch turned out to be a massive...
That looks really silly. Holy shit. Okay.
...of robots, World War I zombie soldiers, and dragons. Like every Snyder movie, it has its defenders, but Sucker Punch turned out to be a massive critical and commercial failure. Like, the few people who actually went to see it in theaters really did not like it. And just when it seemed like Snyder might be in trouble, Warner Brothers and Christopher Nolan picked him to run the entire DC Comics movie universe.
Why though? Like, yeah, 300, like, people liked it at the time, I guess. Right? Did we check that? I think they did. The first movie, Dawn of the Dead, apparently people like that. I haven't seen it. But what's it called? Yeah, like Sucker Punch was not well liked at all, as you just said. Watchmen was I feel like, even like, I don't know because I wasn't really around for the conversation back then, but even that, I feel like people don't like it too much and didn't from the get-go, I think. Especially like fans from the comic. But yeah, it's just a weird decision for me.
Well, sort of. Man of Steel, Snyder's first Superman movie, is really the closest to a regular work-for-hire gig he'd done since Dawn of the Dead. It was a project developed by a bigger, higher-profile filmmaker that needed a steady hand as a director, and Snyder was picked for the job.
What was, like, I know he was a producer or an executive producer, but what exactly was Nolan's involvement in Man of Steel? Because if he really was instrumental to that film, then my estimation of him as a filmmaker goes down even more than it already has with Interstellar and Tenet and The Dark Knight Rises and all that. Although I did like Oppenheimer, but yeah.
But despite thematic parallels to his other work, Man of Steel, from first glance, does not look like a Zack Snyder film at all. There is zero slow motion in this movie and relatively minimal use of green screens.
Wait, I don't think, like, I haven't seen this movie in a while, but I don't think either of those are true. I feel like there was a lot of slow motion. Maybe not for Zack Snyder, but there was. Like, I feel like that's something people criticized even back then. There's, like, a lot of green screen as well. Like, all the alien stuff. When he gets engulfed in skulls, of course, everything, like, not on Earth. All the alien stuff, but also, I mean, like, when he flies and shit. I feel like there's gotta be a lot of green screen in this as well.
The filmmaker who had become best known for hyper-stylized, ultra-slick, fetishized imagery dropped all of that and instead focused on naturalism, using a loose, handheld, sort of cinema verite, quasi-documentary style, something more reminiscent of Paul Greengrass or late-period Catherine Bigelow. Of course, what then
I don't know what that means. Maybe that outs me as a not real film fan, but I have no idea what that means.
happened was that Warner Brothers started panicking because their superhero movie universe was so far behind Marvel's, and Snyder, I guess, was just the right guy in the right place at the right time, and suddenly ended up at...
Was he, though? Like, no. Not at all. Like, the DCEU was a fucking disaster from the get-go. people didn't like it like from day one.
The architect of this entire cinematic universe.
Yeah, for like 2 movies, and then they dropped it.
He got more control and steered the series more in line with his own sensibilities. But of course, we're
Okay, I'm gonna. I don't like doing that because I want people to be able to. Oh, there's subtitles. Ah, okay, automatic. Never mind. I don't like to do this because I want people to be able to speed up the video themselves, but I need to speed it up a little bit because it's kind of late.
all aware
Hello?
of the kerfuffle that happened there, and God, what is there to even say about this anymore? I mean, like, sorry, you guys, you all know this story. You've seen like 30 other video essays analyzing Zack Snyder's superhero movies, the politics of his version of Superman, the differences between the Snyder cut and the theatrical cut of Justice League. Like, I'm really seriously wondering if I'm just wasting my time here. Is this whole thing a fool's errand? Did the other me put this off for 2 years because there really is nothing new to say about Zack Snyder?
Stop with your cringe lore, please. I don't care. I know this is mean. I know this isn't fair or whatever, but I really don't care. Like, if it was good or funny or interesting at all, but it's not. Like, I haven't watched the Patrick H. Willems video in probably like 5 years, so maybe if I did, I'd find it more interesting, but just from this video, I do not care at all.
Are there any new questions about him that are worth answering? Okay, that's not actually a new question at all, but I mean, some of his work kind of is. Like,
Okay, let's Google. Check. I have a general idea what it means, but I would like to. Objectivism. Objectivism is a philosophical system named and developed by Russian-American writer and philosopher Ayn Rand. She described it as the concept of man as a heroic being with his own happiness as the moral purpose of his life, with productive achievement as his noblest activity and reason as his only absolute. Okay. Okay. Maybe he'll define it better.
honestly don't think the Ayn Rand stuff is quite as big a deal as people make it out to be. Like, Brad Bird's movies have much more overt objectivist themes.
I'm
As big a
sorry.
deal as
That picture. That's edited, right? She doesn't have. Oh, I'm sorry for all these detours, but I'm curious. Ayn Rand. Images. Yeah, that's edited. Yeah. Absolutely, right? Gotta be, right? I'm sorry. Yeah, has to be. Okay. That's it. Let's keep going.
people make it out to be. Like, Brad Bird's movies have much more overt objectivist themes, and we all love The Incredibles and Ratatouille. So, like,
Okay, but please develop this. Like, what's the objectivist themes in Ratatouille or The Incredibles? Because I don't know. I don't have good enough of an understanding of the philosophy. I haven't seen these movies in too long. Like, please, come on.
I think I'm just gonna go sleep on this and take a break.
Why even bring it
Hopefully I'll
up
come back in the
then?
morning with some new take. I don't know.
Oh no. Okay, we're gonna 2x this. I don't care. I'm sorry.
What's going on? Follow the snowy owl. Watch the unwatched film. What the hell? Got Hulu. It's got Hulu. Guardians of the Owls of Gahul. Oh my god.
Okay.
What I'm about to tell you will sound absurd and impossible, but I promise you, every word of this is true.
Sorry.
In 2010, in between Watchmen and Sucker Punch, Zack Snyder directed another movie. His first and
Yeah, I've heard of this movie, but I haven't seen it. Sorry, I need to free up some RAM. Just 1 second. Yeah. Come on, computer, please. I want to keep going. Okay, we're good. All right, let's go.
only animated movie, and it is called Legend of the Guardians, The Owls of Gahul. And to my knowledge, no living person has ever seen this movie until me. I even checked Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, and not a single person has ever reviewed or rated this movie.
I mean, obviously that's not true, right? We don't need to.
Okay, here we go. The movie is a fantasy adventure about, you guessed it, owls. The film is the second feature produced by Animal Logic, the Australian visual effects and animation company that had a massive success 4 years earlier with
Ooh,
Happy Feet,
Happy
which was
Feet.
directed by
I liked Happy Feet. I haven't seen it in at least 10 years, but I liked
George Miller. So I guess they decided to repeat their formula, make an animated movie about realistic-looking CGI birds, directed by a filmmaker best known for violent R-rated action movies. Look, I know it seems weird, but hey, it won an Oscar the first time. Legend of the Guardians, The Owls of Gahul is actually based on a series of children's books called The Guardians of Gahul. I don't know anything about these books, but watching the movie, there are a whole lot of made-up words and names thrown around, and it's honestly a lot to keep track of. So, to explain what the hell Gahul...
That's not really valid criticism, is it? Because, like, look at Lord of the Rings. Like, there's, like, whole made-up languages in these, and, like, people like I like it. Okay.
actually is, I called in some help from Gahul expert and former intern, Emma Logsden.
The Guardians of Gahul is a 16-book series by Catherine Lasky that follows an owl named Soren as he goes from a young owlet who's pushed out of his nest and then taken to an evil organization called St. Aggie's that brainwashes children and forces them to do manual labor. He then escapes and finds a magical tree that has a bunch of owls in it called the Guardians of Gahul.
Great.
And along the way, he finds three
don't
main
care.
friends named Gylfie, Twilight, and Digger, who are sort of like
Excuse me?
his pals, and they call themselves a band of owls. The Guardians of Gahul books deal with themes of white supremacy, fascism, and genocide. Specifically in the first 3 books, and especially the first book, they deal with themes of cultural genocide and like the nature of grief and loss. All 4 of the main characters are orphans, one of whom his brother was the victim of cannibalism. They're quite dark, but they are a fantastic introduction to the
I'm sorry, I need to read this again. I was distracted by Discord. Read. Yeah, let's reread this fucking video. No, yeah, you know what I mean. 1 second, sorry. Okay, sorry, I'm back. There we go.
concepts of white supremacy and fascism for children,
Ooh.
whom books and his pals and a bunch of owls in it taken to a 16-book series by Catherine Lasky that follows an owl named Soren as he goes from a young owlet who's pushed out of his nest and then taken to an evil organization called St. Aggie's that brainwashes children and forces them to do manual labor. He then escapes and finds a magical tree that has a bunch of owls in it called the Guardians of Ga'Hoole.
Okay, this all sounds fucking insane. Holy shit.
And along the way, he finds 3 main friends named Gylfie, Twilight, and Digger, who are sort of like his pals, and they call themselves
I'm such a child, dude. Gigger. Come on.
a band of owls. The Guardians of Ga'Hoole books deal with themes of white supremacy, fascism, and genocide, specifically in the first 3
Do they? Like, I don't know. They might, but...
books, and especially the first book, they deal with themes of cultural genocide and like the nature of grief and loss. All 4 of the main characters are orphans, one of whom was his brother was the victim of cannibalism. They're quite dark, but they are a fantastic introduction to the concepts of white supremacy and fascism for children, and they're introduced in a way that is appropriate for children, but still like imparts the seriousness and the depth of these issues. One of the
Okay.
things I love is the vocabulary of it. Like, they're very serious books and a lot of serious things happen, but then they have words like dwanking and flint mops and gizuition, which is like gizzard intuition. They're always saying they feel things in their gizzards. They're like, they
I'm sorry, this just sounds painful. Holy shit. Like, I don't... Like, to each their own. This is not like quote-unquote objective criticism, but... Oh, I don't think I could get through these. Holy shit.
know it in their gizzards, and they're reading books like The Thermodynamics of Gizzard Intuition. These books were a huge part of my childhood. These are actually my childhood copies. I got them in around 2006-ish, I think. And they're a really important series to me because they introduced me and many children to concepts of white supremacy and also to empathy. And
I don't have much to say here. Like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe they do. I wish I had, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, if it's done well, that's commendable, but I don't know, right?
Community. And I also read the spin-off series about direwolves that she wrote, which is also really good. I have heard rumors that there might be a movie adaptation of the books, which I think would be incredible. They're a very like cinematic series, especially the way they describe flying, for example. But I haven't seen it, and I also don't know anybody else who's seen it, like online or in real life, so I'm not sure it exists.
Thanks, Emma. Okay, so we kind of know why Animal Logic made this movie, but why did Zack Snyder? Now, I'm not one to say whether this was a passion project, or a paycheck, or something in between. All we know is that development was already well underway when Snyder jumped on board, but it's not like he was just a gun for hire here. The Owl movie is maybe the most distinctly Snyder-looking movie there is, so something obviously drew him to the project, because the end result isn't just a movie that looks like it was made by Zack Snyder, but it feels like it in every fiber of its being. So
What do you mean by that? Like, can you, like, I hate this whole, like, but it feels like it. Like, can you expand on that, please? Like, yeah, I don't know.
pose a question here, and I want you to stick with me. Is the Owl movie secretly the key to unlocking everything about Snyder as a filmmaker? Honestly, kind of. The story is about a family of barn owls in the forest of Taito. Specifically, it is about brothers Soren and Clud, who grow up hearing their father's stories about the legendary Guardians of Ga'Hoole, a mythical group of owl warriors who once defeated an evil group of owls called the Pure Ones, and their fearsome leader, Metalbeak, in a great battle. Soren is captivated by the stories, but Clud is less.
Metalbeak? Sorry, I was contemplating if I want to say something about this, but Metalbeak? Come on. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe this is just me, but that sounds cringe as shit.
Enthused. Now, one day, when learning to fly, the brothers are kidnapped by a group who
But
turn out
I guess, like, it's the kind of edgy cringe that Zack Snyder would do, so I guess he's right so far.
to be the Pure Ones. Oh my god,
Or at least in that respect.
they're real. And Soren then meets an elf owl named Gylfie. The pure ones try to teach them that barn owls, like those from Taito, are the purest and most powerful owls, and they deserve to rule owl kind. Clud drinks the Kool-Aid, but Soren and Gylfi escape with the help of a Pure One turncoat named Grimble, and they fly off to seek the help of the Guardians of Ga'Hoole, who it turns out are also real. This eventually leads to a big battle, and you can pretty much fill in the blanks from there. Okay, I'm not going to talk about the plot in detail because none of you have actually seen this movie.
Yeah,
It's
but
kind of
wait,
like a
wait,
fairy
wait,
tale.
wait, what? I'm not gonna talk about the plot because in detail because you haven't seen it. What that? Like, I'm not gonna cook because you guys haven't eaten in a while. Like, that doesn't maybe if it's something people haven't seen, then maybe do spend some time on actually explaining what happens, right? Like, maybe it's not necessary for the argument he's gonna make, but that seems, I don't know, that seems strange. Seems unlikely, I guess.
Intended for children, but it also features a whole lot of ideas that have appeared and reappeared throughout Snyder's work, starting with the mythical element and the story of ancient, intended for children, but it also much fill in the blanks from there. Okay, I'm not going to talk about the plot in detail because none of you have actually seen this movie. It's kind of like a fairy tale, intended for children, but it also features a whole lot of ideas that have appeared and
Is it a movie intended for children about space owls? Idiot.
appeared throughout Snyder's work, starting with the mythical element and the story.
Owl wizards. Fucking hell. I do not like this guy at all.
Appeared and reappeared throughout Snyder's work, starting with the mythical element and the story of ancient heroes. The movie begins with a story being told about legendary warriors fighting a spectacular battle, which is exactly the same as the framing device in 300. Soren is obsessed with this age-old tale of myth, and when the Guardians turn out to be real, he ends up becoming a part of that myth. And keep in mind, the movie's antagonist...
One sec, please. Okay.
is not just Metalbeak, but his brother Clud, who believes he's stupid for believing in the Guardians. Because in the Owl movie, being captivated by myth is kind of a virtue. In regards to Snyder being captivated by myth, we'll come back to that. But of course, this is all mostly just surface level stuff. So why don't we dig a little bit deeper into why the Owl movie is so very Snyder and so very strange. For starters, it is shockingly dark and weirdly violent for a Hollywood animated kids movie. Like, it literally ends with the hero stabbing the villain to death. Like, check this out.
What?
In the first few seconds of the movie, you get a bunch of sweeping, visually dazzling shots that feel particularly Snyder-esque, with their use of slow-mo and speed ramping.
Oh, that reminds me of the leaf in BVS. Oh God. Okay.
Unlike live action, here Snyder has pretty much total control over every visual element of this medium. But also, this weird thing happens in the opening scene where the camera, not a literal camera of course, but you know what I mean,
Don't. Yeah, we do. Like,
focuses for a second on this really cute little mouse before it gets whisked away by an owl, presumably to be eaten. This owl, Noctis, arrives home with the mouse still clutched in its talons. But then the movie just kind of zooms in enough that the mouse is out of frame, and we get this entire introduction to Soren and his family, the main good guys of the film, while the mouse is probably in agony somewhere. I know it sounds like I'm nitpicking, but this is one of the first...
this is, I mean, maybe, but this is really emblematic of Zack Snyder, I feel. It's good that you mentioned it. Thank you. Oh, this is really funny to me. Okay.
In a series of strange decisions that hints at something either really fucked up or really violent that the film, being a kid's movie, doesn't really confront. But it always seems to be there in the margins, hovering around Snyder's text. It's like he can't help but put this stuff in there. And so just when you finally...
Yeah, he can't help himself. He's a 50-year-old, 13-year-old. Like, there's not much else to say about it.
About the poor dying mouse, the film introduces, I kid you not, the visual of a mouse pellet, a thing that real barn owls cough up, containing the undigested body parts of its prey, like fur and bones. And when you think that's over and done with, Soren is sent to work in something called a pelletorium, where he is forced to pick through hundreds upon hundreds of these pellets, essentially mangled mouse corpses that the owls vomit up, to find shards of metal that were in the mice's digestive systems. I am dead serious. This is a major part of the plot. Like, apart from Dawn of the Dead, this may genuinely be...
I mean, I guess it teaches kids about owl, like, digestion. I guess.
Snyder's grossest movie. But I guess props to him for leaning into the weirder parts of the book. You may not see the actual violence and the mice's suffering the way you see everyone suffer in his previous movies, but you definitely see the end result. But there's also another weird idea in the Owl movie that harkens back to 300. And while you can sort of hand-wave the mouse corpses as a quirky but realistic detail, this one is more... how do I put this without getting too controversial? Look, whatever, it's been talked about to death already, but you know how 300 can sort of be read as this fascist, white supremacist text about genetically superior white heroes taking...
I don't. I've never heard that before. Like, I cannot like, I might agree with that. Like, I'm a bit of a lefty cuck. I might agree with that, but please develop it. Like, please, like, explain what you mean.
on this faceless and or Orientalist horde from the Middle East. If not, there's plenty of writing and other videos out there about it. Now, that may or may not be conscious or intentional on Snyder's part. It's hard to say, but it's there. And the Owl movie kinda has some weirdly similar ideas, and also some opposing ones. Now, of course, you have the villains, who call themselves the Pure Ones, and much like the Spartans in 300...
Yeah, that's like pretty on the nose, huh?
They try and root out the strong owls from the weak when they're still kids. Again, the Pure...
Wait, but like in 300, just a second. Like, isn't that like, it's been a while since I've had history and since I've had like ancient Greek history, but isn't that kind of what the Spartans did? Like, is depicting that in and of itself like already fascism, or is it depicted favorably? Because I don't remember that. I'm sorry. I'm still kind of hung up on the whole, yeah, fascism thing in 300. And white supremacy is weird to me as well. If when we're talking about a movie that takes place like that long ago, because the concept of white didn't even really exist back then, as far as I know. Although, of course, it is a movie that has been released in our time, where it very much does exist. But yeah, I don't know. This is like not worth it right now.
Ones are the bad guys. So obviously the movie is not agreeing with their perspective when it brings up what is essentially owl eugenics. So the villains here are weirdly similar to the heroes of 300. But then you meet the good guys, the guardians of Ga'Hoole themselves, creatures of myth who Soren has looked up to his entire life. And when you see them for the first time, most of them look like this. But their king and queen, because for some reason these owls have bloodline royalty, look like this. Now obviously these are owls, not people, and we're looking at white feathers, not skin color or other human characteristics, but it is kind of fascinating to see that on one hand, the movie frames its villains as monstrous, evil, fascist manipulators when they say things like,
Remember, weakness is for the lower species.
but
That owl ain't white though. Like,
then it applies a visual design to its heroes that has some uncomfortable racial implications along similar lines.
Sorry. Okay, that's on me. I thought he was talking about the Willems. Okay.
Up one very important question.
Oh. Oh. Are we really doing this right now? Ah, I guess okay.
What? No, I mean not as far as we could tell. That's not the question I was talking about. No, I don't think Zack Snyder is a racist, and
Thank God. I was not. I was not. I didn't want to have that conversation now. Like going through his movies, like trying to detect the racism. Oh God.
no, I don't think the Owl movie is racist. What I do think is that it's a little confused about exactly what messages it is communicating. Something that can be said of just about every single movie he's ever made. So now the real question is, what messages it is communicating? Snyder is a racist, and no, I don't think the Owl movie is racist. What I do think is that it's a little confused about exactly what messages it is communicating. Something.
Okay, sorry, I needed to listen to that again. Yeah, that's something that you can say about most of his movies, for sure. For sure.
That can be said of just about every single movie he's ever made. So now the real question is, the frequent problem in Snyder's movies is that he clearly gets so caught up in creating the coolest images possible, images crafted with an extremely high level of artistry and technical skill, that he kind of loses sight of what those images are actually communicating. Like in 300,
Yeah.
he cast a lot of
I'd
handsome
agree with
men,
that.
got them on intense workout regimens so they were totally shredded, and then
Yeah. Oh, this is another thing. Like, I'm kind of memeing with this, but Zack Snyder seems really obsessed with like the male physique, like peak male physique. To the point where I am sometimes wondering if he might be a little too into it. Not too. I that sounded wrong. Like, but like, yeah. Basically, I'm kind of wondering if he's got a little bit of the game in him, which is fine, but it's kind of funny.
put them in all these cool as hell shots where they brutally kill armies of bad guys in spectacular slow motion. But also, the heroes are portrayed entirely by a group of white guys, and the movie shows them fighting off and killing an invading army of brown people. Plus, this was released only a couple months after the Iraq War troop surge of 2007 began, and this was still a time when America's anti-Middle Eastern sentiment was running high in the wake of 9/11, and so the movie can easily be read as some kind of white supremacist text about why strong white
Ah. I know where he's coming from here, but that seems a little bit. I don't know. Seems a bit much. Like, I see what he's saying, but I don't know. I don't know, man. That's. Yeah, I don't know.
people must band together to kill the invading foreigners. When asked about this, Snyder claimed he had no political intent at all behind the movie. So it does kind of seem like he was just so focused on making cool shit that he just missed the optics of how that cool shit might come off.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Okay, now I'm sorry to relitigate the whole debate about civilians and destruction in Man of Steel, but we must, because there's a huge disconnect. When you have a scene where Superman makes the decision to side with humanity against his fellow Kryptonians, and his father says to him, "You can save all of them."
You can save all of them.
And then a minute later, Superman himself is causing truly insane levels of destruction in his hometown, smashing his enemies.
I mean, yeah, he's not saying anything new here, but that's super fair. Like, that is really confusing.
The train yards, silos, even a crowded IHOP. And then half an hour later, he is ramming General Zod through skyscrapers. Like, Superman is directly responsible for multiple explosions in populated areas. And the issue here is not the script or the fact that he is fighting the villains. It is the way Snyder chooses to visualize it. Because yeah, it does look cool when Superman throws this dude into a train yard, which then explodes. But what that image tells us is that Superman doesn't really care that much about humanity at all. Like, it is...
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think that's something Zack Snyder, like, explicitly wanted to convey, but like it just seems like, yeah, basically what he already said. He's so like cut up in making cool ass shots that he kind of forgets what it says about the character, because everything a character does characterizes them, right? Yeah, yeah.
Totally cool to have a scene where Superman rescues Lois Lane and then they kiss and make a joke. But it becomes really weird when you frame this nice, lighthearted moment with them standing in the rubble of like 100 9/11s, with everyone around them covered in the dust and rubble of collapsed buildings.
Yeah.
Snyder's visual choice is clashing with what the script is doing and creating this wild tonal dissonance.
I mean, that's the script too, right? Like, yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, this is getting a little bit harsh again.
Oh my god, holy shit, that alarm sound he's got in here, that's like, oh, grinding my gears. Holy shit, don't do that again, please.
So let's drop in another nice thing. He's better at visualizing superpowers than almost any other filmmaker. In Man of Steel in particular, Snyder found a way to show what super speed and super strength might look like in a real-world context that made them more believable on screen than I've ever seen before, or since. The choice to use all loose handheld camera work has the camera always trying to keep up with the action, and Snyder pays really close attention to the physics.
I do not have much to say about this. Like, it seems untrue, but I can't really think of any counterexample. Logan. I feel like Logan has really great depiction of that. But yeah.
The environment around the characters is always impacted, whether it's asphalt being
And obviously this was before Logan, so
crushed under their feet, or just the wind from their movements blowing things back. At a time when we were becoming numb to superheroic visuals, this was genuinely awe.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I do like that. I can just say that I do like the way all this looks. I like the way Superman flies. I like the way he fights. It's like very dramatic, very over the top, but I do like it, and it does have like a grounded feel to it, I guess. Less so in the Snyder cut again, but like, yeah, sure.
Inspiring. And it's this tonal dissonance that I think totally sinks his adaptation of Watchmen. The film translates nearly every panel and every word of dialogue from the comic to the screen.
Like about the thing I said before with the darkness, like way before that, the movie looks way darker than the comic. Like even here, where like this is a dark panel, right? Like visually dark. The movie is like way darker still. Like there's basically no color in that frame. While the comic panel, while dark, still pretty colorful as well. Like even the moon. Wait. Come on.
And yet every panel and every word
Like even the moon, right? And the jacket and everything, yeah.
dialogue from the comic to the screen, and yet the entire point of the comic gets lost in translation because of Snyder's approach. The comic by Moore and Gibbons is deconstructing the superhero genre by saying, hey, these superheroes are not actually awe-inspiring gods. They are just sad, pathetic humans. The comic has no real action scenes of any kind. Any fighting that it portrays is messy and presented in evenly sized panels in grids, just dispassionately showing the events but never making anything romanticized or cool, as they would be in most other superhero comics. But in Snyder's film, he takes all of those panels and then renders them in adorable.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Sorry, I don't have anything to say here. But I agree with all of that.
Slow motion. He adds fight scenes where the heroes pose and flip while kicking bad guys in the head. Instead of the ugly reality the comic presents, everything here is fetishized and sexy. Essentially, Snyder turned Watchmen into just another superhero movie. Let me point to a specific moment to show you how Snyder missed the point. Chapter 2 of the comic shows the funeral for Eddie Blake, the comedian, as his former crime-fighting acquaintances attend and each think back to memories they have of him. The film, just like the comic, will push in on a character, shifting into their perspective and showing us their memory. In the comic, when it shifts into Dr. Manhattan's perspective, he thinks back to a memory of the Vietnam War, and the comedian murdering a woman in a bar. Yet in the movie, when the camera pushes in on Dr. Manhattan and we enter his perspective, Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries kicks in on the soundtrack.
I mean, this point has been made millions of times, but it is true. Like, this is weird as fuck. That this is like portrayed as heroic, and again, it seems like he's just thinking about the visual and nothing else. But yeah, like, it doesn't take that much bad faith to see it as as like glorifying this, like glorifying a massacre. I don't know.
And we cut to this awesome image of a giant Dr. Manhattan marching in slow motion through Vietnam, exploding Viet Cong soldiers. So what the movie tells us here is that this is how Dr. Manhattan remembers himself, being a badass, blowing up his enemies, and playing the same music that Robert Duvall cranked up in Apocalypse Now to get the soldiers excited to attack an enemy village. If you told me that this was how the comedian remembers this, sure, I absolutely buy that. But for this immortal being who feels almost no emotions and just clinically observes all of time simultaneously, this feels wildly out of character. And there's one—
Wait, sorry. He doesn't. I don't know if it's like, if that is being said in the comic or the movie, that he observes all of time. It's at the same time, but that's not how it's portrayed in either. He just, right? He slips in and out of different times. Well, okay, never mind. Sorry, I'm not sure.
more moment that is so crazy, I have to highlight it. Near the end of Watchmen, spoilers by the way, Dr. Manhattan kills Rorschach to stop him from telling the world about what Ozymandias did. He blows up Rorschach's body, leaving a messy, gory stain in the snow. It is not dramatic, it's not spectacular, it's just over and done with quickly. Rorschach's death, in the end, is meaningless. But in Snyder's movie, this moment is a grand operatic death, with Night Owl falling to his knees and screaming in horror, and then we see this. An overhead shot where the blood and gore from Rorschach's body has perfectly
Okay, I need to rewind for a sec, but first I need to get a drink. I won't play a song here because I'll be back quickly, but yeah, just give me like 2 minutes. Okay, I'm back. Let's keep watching. Let's pull through, man. We're more than halfway there.
Formed a Rorschach pattern in the snow. He has died in the form of his own logo, leaving a beautiful symbol behind. And when I watched this, I couldn't help but think of a moment in the 1997 film Batman and Robin, when Robin crashes his motorcycle through the doors of the in Snyder's movie. This moment in the snow. Dr. Manhattan kills Rorschach to stop him from telling the world about what Ozymandias did. He blows up Rorschach's body, leaving a messy, gory stain in the snow. It is not dramatic, it's not spectacular,
Great ending. I love it.
it's just over and done with quickly. Rorschach's death, in the end, is meaningless. But in Snyder's movie, this moment is a grand operatic death, with Night Owl falling to his knees and screaming in horror, and then we see this. An overhead shot where the blood and gore from Rorschach's body has perfectly formed a Rorschach pattern in the snow. He has
Yeah, I guess. Again, it's been a while since I've seen that movie, but I don't think I ever interpreted it like that, but I mean, it's fair, I guess.
died in the form of his own logo, leaving a beautiful symbol behind. And when I
Yeah.
watched this, I couldn't help but think of a moment in the 1997 film Batman and Robin, when Robin crashes his motorcycle through the doors of the museum, creating a perfect Robin symbol-shaped hole. So yeah, in his film that is supposed to be about tearing down our romanticized ideas of superheroes, Snyder has inadvertently copied Joel Schumacher's Batman.
Okay, let's unpack this. So, number one, just because the comic is about that doesn't necessarily mean the movie is about that, and from like just watching the movie itself, it doesn't seem like that's it. That's what he tried to do. Like it feels more like he really misunderstood the comic and just made a glorifying superhero movie, which you can criticize for sure, but yeah. And then like to connect this to Batman and Robin seems weird to me, since that's like a staple in so many things, like even going outside of like like any cartoon where somebody runs through a wall leaves like a dem-sized shaped hole there, right? So yeah, I don't okay.
Snyder's approach of let's fetishize every single thing in every single shot and make everything look awesome all the time is clearly a result of years spent directing slick, sexy commercials for cars and beer and sports apparel.
Yeah. Or maybe he's just naturally inclined to do that, and that's why his commercials and music videos were successful or well liked or whatever, right? I mean, like saying he learned that in those like in that kind of work, that yeah, I don't know, seems weird to me.
It's actually very similar to Michael Bay's approach. The difference, I would argue, is that this approach works a lot better on a movie like The Rock or Bad Boys 2 than it does on Watchmen or a movie about abused women in a mental asylum. But that's just me.
I guess, yeah.
I have a theory that everything you can ever say about Snyder's other movies individually, you can collectively say about the Owl movie. Hashtag Soren enters the Speed Force. There is, of course, the violence and...
Everything you can say about the other movies individually, you can say collectively about the Owl movie. But the Owl movie is one movie. So, what does that mean? Or like or like there's like ABC in that movie and BCD in that movie and ACD in that movie, but the Owl movie has ABC and D? Is that what he means?
the mythological heroes, like you'll see there's other movies individually, you can collectively say about the Owl movie.
But
Hashtag
no,
sword
but that you wouldn't say that like that, right? I'll just see.
movies individually, you can collectively say about the Owl movie. Hashtag Soren enters the Speed Force. There's, of course, the violence and the mythological heroes, like you'll see in 300 or Justice League. You have accidental imagery with weird implications, and you have very intentional imagery where things... Theory.
Sorry, I was distracted. I wanna hear this.
That everything you can ever say about Snyder's other movies individually, you can collectively say about the Owl movie. Hashtag Soren enters the Speed Force. There's, of course, the violence and the mythological heroes, like you'll see in 300 or Justice League. You have accidental imagery with weird implications, and you have very intentional imagery where things look gorgeous and terrifying all at once. Like Metalbeak looks exactly like if Frank Frazetta had painted an owl.
Yeah, wow. Now you're putting in images of Frank Frazetta. Why didn't you do that when you first mentioned him? Also, really weird to call back to that now, but okay.
Weird implications, and you have very intentional imagery where things look gorgeous and terrifying all at once. Like Metalbeak looks exactly like if Frank Frazetta had painted an owl. The Owl movie features a ton of Snyder's favorite recurring tropes. There's an
Okay, I'm sorry. I've been thinking a bit about the visual thing with Zack Snyder, and while he does have like some really good visuals, a lot of his shit looks really bad. Like not even in the new movies, right? Like, I mean, fucking what's it called? Doomsday looks horrendous. The way the Flash runs always looks bad. Same with Wonder Woman's run. Like, he's at best hit or miss. At best.
army of faceless monsters, as seen in 300, Sucker Punch, Dawn of the Dead, Army of the Dead, and his Superman movies. There's a blue energy super
Sorry, what?
movie features a ton of Snyder's favorite recurring tropes. There's an army of faceless monsters, as seen in 300, Sucker Punch, Dawn of the Dead, Army of the Dead, and his
Yeah, but that's just like fantasy, sci-fi, action trope in general. I wouldn't ascribe that to Zack Snyder. Like, look at all the bad guy armies in the MCU, for example.
Superman movies. There's a blue.
Look at Star Wars even.
The Owl movie features a ton of Snyder's favorite recurring tropes. There's an army of faceless monsters, as seen in 300, Sucker Punch, Dawn of the Dead, Army of the Dead, and his Superman movies. There's a blue energy super weapon, like in Watchmen or Man of Steel. There's the weird.
Again, that's a superhero trope from like the 2010s, right? Like the Amazing Spider-Man, Avengers. Fuck, there's more. There's more, but yeah, that's not a Zack Snyderism as well.
Genetic purity stuff. And then, of course, you have his signature visual techniques. If you ask someone to boil down the Zack Snyder aesthetic, chances are the first thing they will mention is slow motion. And for good reason. Like, people are still making lazy J.J. Abrams lens flare jokes, and he doesn't use lens flares half as much as Snyder uses slow motion.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, there's shots where he slow-mos to slow-mo. Like, he's insane with that.
300, nearly every shot that doesn't have dialogue is in slow motion.
There's a lot of slow motion. We try to keep the slow motion away from the dialogue as much as possible.
Don't get me wrong, that is not.
Yeah, I don't know where that clip is from. That almost seems like a parody, but yeah, of course. Like, what?
Always a bad thing. In fact, slow motion is probably one of the most purely cinematic effects you can achieve with a camera. Cinema, especially through editing, is all about manipulating time, and slow motion forces you to see.
Oh yeah, it's all about manipulating time. Like, come on, that's such. I like, there's so much going into quote unquote cinema. Like, it's weird. That's weird to say. Like, feels reductive.
Things in a way the human eye otherwise can't, by slowing down time itself. It's like the filmmaker is playing God, which is kind of fitting because slow motion was actually invented by a priest. I'm not saying slow motion is God's way of speaking to us.
Wait, slow motion is invented by a priest? Motherfucker. Tell me about that. That sounds interesting. Like, maybe he will, but it sounds like he's going somewhere else.
Playing God, which is kind of fitting because slow motion was actually invented by a priest. I'm not saying slow motion is God's way of speaking to us through Zack Snyder, but I'm not saying that. That priest, August Musker, was also a physicist, and in 1904, he was trying to invent a combo camera/projector that could produce a smoother image than the flickering, hand-cranked film reels of the time. I won't bore you with the mechanics, but one of the ways he tried to do this involved capturing 48 frames per second instead of 24, so twice the normal speed. And when the
Ooh, I'm sorry, this is really, this has nothing to do with the video, but the other day, I was thinking it would be really, like, it might sound really cool if I for my like for some of my songs like segments, I record them slower or faster than they actually are, and then stretch it or smush it. That might sound really cool. I'm gonna do that. Sorry. Yeah. No,
Image was
nothing to do with the video.
played back at 24 frames per second, well, the rest is history. Ever since then, slow motion has been used for a variety of functions. In sports broadcasting, it can help you catch a moment you missed or figure out the winner of a race. In cinema, it can make a moment feel dreamlike or intense or terrifying. It can slow down an action so you can see more of it, or it can do what directors do best and draw your attention to something specific and tell us this is important. The first time Snyder ever used slow motion in a movie was in Dawn of the Dead, for a gun going off and a shell casing hitting the floor. This and
I'm guessing this was the first time it occurred, like in a movie. Like maybe he shot. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
maybe the odd explosion were the only real flourishes in that movie that we would now consider Snyder-esque, and they were used sparingly to emphasize the weight and intensity of these moments. And then in 300,
Slow motion for me, moving slow motion for me.
Snyder went totally overboard with the slow-mo, and yet it kind of worked for the material and the way he approached it, since the original comic book by Frank Miller is kind of like this hyper-violent tone poem. In fact, it seems like it's time for another. He finally evolved slow-mo action beyond what The Matrix had done. The early 2000s were filled with a horde of
Okay. I mean, like, I'm more well versed in his like later work, so I'll hear you out. But my I associate like bad over the top slow mo with Zack Snyder, not like innovative. You know what I mean, slow mo. But yeah, I'll hear you out.
movies trying in different ways to replicate the action of The Matrix. You had a lot of slow motion, some bullet time, and a lot of guns and martial arts, and honestly most of it was lame at the time and has gotten worse with age. The only logical step for the action genre was to run in the exact opposite direction, with the Bourne movies kicking off a trend of grounded, disorienting action scenes that eschewed stylization for jittery, fast-cut chaos. And that was still the trend in 2007 when Zack Snyder came along with 300 and blew it all up. Look, you're all familiar with what 300 looks like. Each slow motion scene in that movie feels like a tableau that you have to lean back and take in. And there are some moments where the slow-mo is genuinely incredible, like during this amazing speed ramping scene. In fact, this one shot here, which is actually two shots digitally stitched together back and forth, might be the most.
You could not re-record that. You had to put like. I know this is nitpicky, but I hate that. I do not understand why people can't just re-record something when they made a mistake. Like, it's so fucking lazy. Like, it takes a second. I guess maybe he didn't have. No, because no, I'm sorry. I was gonna say maybe he didn't have access to that location anymore, but that wasn't like we didn't see him. He could have just re-recorded that in his booth. Well, that would have sounded weird, but in a like room with similar acoustics. Like, I don't like that.
Innovative use of slow motion since the Wachowskis. In The Matrix, you know the scene I'm talking about, they used a rig of multiple cameras to create the feeling of movement that.
Okay, it's 12 and I need to work tomorrow, so only at like later than usual, but I'm gonna speed it up a little bit more.
Detached from space and time. In 300, Snyder pushes that idea a step further, with his speed ramping, whipping back and forth between frame rates in a way that first makes you anticipate each strike, leaving you in a state of suspended animation, like you're holding your breath, before maximizing the eventual impact. Back and forth. In The Matrix, you know the scene I'm talking about, they used a rig of multiple cameras to create the feeling of movement detached from space and time. In 300, Snyder pushes that idea a step further, with his speed ramping, whipping back and forth between frame rates in a way that first makes you anticipate each strike, leaving you in a state of suspended animation, like you're holding your breath.
I need to listen to this again because I don't really see, Like maybe he was the first one to do that, or like one of the first ones, but I I don't really see how that's like evolution of the Matrix thing. It just seems like a different thing.
Stitched together back and forth might be the most innovative use of slow motion since the Wachowskis. In The Matrix, you know the scene I'm talking about, they used a rig of multiple cameras to create the feeling of movement detached from space and time. In 300, Snyder pushes that idea a step further, with his speed ramping, whipping back and forth between frame rates in a way that talking about. They used a rig of multiple cameras to create the feeling of movement detached from space and time. In 300,
Okay, he created yeah, okay. Okay.
Snyder pushes that idea a step further, with his speed ramping, whipping back and forth between frame rates in a way that first makes you anticipate each strike, leaving you in a state of suspended animation, like you're holding your breath, before maximizing the eventual impact.
Okay, yeah, I see what he's saying. Yeah, that's fair, I guess.
It actually wasn't until I watched the Owl movie that I realized something. Of all the directors working in live-action American cinema today, except maybe Paul W.S. Anderson, I don't think any of them are as influenced by video games as Zack Snyder is. His main aesthetic, as co-created with his regular cinematographer Larry Fong, has very high contrast images with very heavy color grading, and extensive use of CGI that is usually not quite photorealistic, but it feels cohesive within the stylized look of the live-action photography.
Yeah. Okay, I guess. But there's like really bad CGI as well. Like again, Doomsday, The Running, what's his name? Steppenwolf. Oh, that looks awful in the Snyder Cut. And Darkseid as well. Like
also happens to be extremely similar to the general aesthetic of many modern action games, and his frequent ultra-smooth CGI-assisted camera moves closely resemble video game
I don't really play video games that much, so I can say.
cutscenes and trailers.
But it rings true, I guess.
And for all his movies until Man of Steel, Snyder's action scenes tended to not have a lot of story beats or reversals, but were mostly just the heroes tearing through wave after wave of random bad guys. So
I know what he means, but that still drives forward the story, even if it's a little much, I guess, or like just yeah. But yeah, okay.
Actually, a video game. We are used to seeing Snyder's speed ramping in live-action movies, but watching it in a CGI animated film made me realize that it looks almost exactly like a QuickTime event in, like, God of War. This is when the action slows down in a video game and prompts you to hit a button to deliver a finishing move, and then it speeds.
Yeah, I guess. I've heard that QuickTime events aren't well liked, but that doesn't really do anything with the point. But yeah, okay.
Back up. Like watching this scene, you can almost see a message appearing that says, press triangle, flashing on the screen. Snyder's speed ramping in 300 was a genuine addition to the language of Hollywood cinema, though some imitators would do it better than others. But what narrative purpose does it serve? It's triangle, flashing on the screen. Snyder's speed ramping in 300 was a genuine addition to the language of Hollywood cinema, though some imitators would do it better than.
That's the thing. That's the Sherlock Holmes movies with RDJ. Cool. I like those movies. I should rewatch those.
Others. But what narrative purpose does it serve? Well, like a lot of slow-mo in the film, it's to really give us a sense of how powerful and coordinated the Spartans were, and how precisely they move and attack their opponents. It's kind of like a dance, and the closest we'll probably ever get to seeing chiseled Greek statues in motion. And you know what? Snyder was right to use it indiscriminately in 300. The problem is, then he started doing it everywhere, and the downside was immediate. We already talked about the problem with Watchmen, where the slow motion glorifies all the characters that the story is working so hard not to glorify. There are moments where it actually does work, like the...
Again, haven't seen the movie in a while, but is that true? I'm not sure.
Bob Dylan scored opening title sequence, where we're witnessing these important flashpoints in this alternate history, like living comic book panels, or in the Dr. Manhattan origin sequence, which is told from the perspective of a character who literally perceives time differently than we do. It makes sense, but where it doesn't make sense is, well, pretty much everywhere else. And that indiscriminate approach to slow motion is how you end up with a 4-hour movie where everything feels kind of the same.
Yeah, oh fuck, dude, that movie could have been so much shorter. So much shorter. Like, this is like, I think this is like a full-on 3-minute sequence like just a full-on song playing, just Aquaman walking toward the sea, throwing away, like littering, which makes no sense for him as a character, and that's it. And it's just a full song playing. The fucking song the people from the village sing when he enters the water as well is fucking insane. Again, the stairs, the full song that plays when Flash saves that one girl, the one that's supposed to be his love interest. It's like you can cut out so much.
Whether it's an amazing, awe-inspiring scene of Aquaman striding across a pier where it works like a charm, or it's a close-up of Bruce Wayne's razor running under the water. And I know these are just two examples, but they're probably the most illustrative ones across Snyder's filmography, because when he's trying to portray his characters as powerful, mythic, larger-than-life figures, hey, what better way to do it than by presenting them in a way that feels outside of time, or at least outside our perception of time, and by giving us a moment to look upon them with awe. So when that's the point of the scene, great. But it's not always the point of the scene. You could argue, and actually I think I am arguing, that the Owl movie is kind of like Snyder's Rosetta Stone, and it makes me wonder what drew him to the project in the first place, whether it was the material itself, or an opportunity to let loose with some of his visual and narrative fixations. Hey, maybe it was a combination of both. But I also think it's important to note that the Owl movie was the most sincere, optimistic thing Snyder would make for a very long time. Being a children's movie, it has an almost diabetic sweetness about it, and a kind of aw shucks demeanor that you would of course expect from
A diabetic sweetness. Oh, dude, just speak normally.
Movie was the most sincere, optimistic thing Snyder would make for a very long time. Being a children's movie, it has an almost diabetic sweetness about it, and a kind of aw shucks demeanor that you would of course expect from an adventure movie aimed at kids. You can hardly say that about his previous films, or even the three that followed. There's so much talk about Snyder's nihilism, the bleak, miserable worlds he builds, populated by tortured characters full of rage. But there's been a surprising, Gahul-esque sincerity in his two most recent movies. Considering how Batman v Superman is maybe the most oppressively bleak and miserable superhero movie ever made, it's shocking how upbeat and hopeful Snyder's Justice League is. There's an almost corny sincerity to some of it, particularly the stuff with Cyborg. And to be clear, I think this is good. The same goes for the father-daughter material in Army of the Dead, which is especially understandable given his recent family tragedy. And I have to admit, it's kinda great when he taps into those die-hard sincere instincts. And I have to wonder if, on some level, the Owl movie was sort of an outlet for that approach, which he couldn't really take with his previous adaptations. But that's not all. Of course, working in animation, Snyder has complete control over what the movie looks like, which I'm sure is tempting for any director. It's more than that. I think...
Sorry. Once again, I was distracted.
In his two most recent movies. Considering how Batman v Superman is maybe the most oppressively bleak and miserable superhero movie ever made, it's shocking how upbeat and hopeful Snyder's Justice League.
The most bleak and oppressive movie ever made? I'm sorry, no. Like, I would put The Sun before that, in a good way, but... no, I'm sorry.
There's an almost corny sincerity to some of it, particularly the stuff with Cyborg. And to be clear, I think this is good. The same goes for the father-daughter material in Army of the Dead, which is especially understandable given his recent family tragedy. And I have to admit, it's kinda great when he taps into those die-hard sincere instincts. And I have to wonder if, on some level, the Owl movie was sort of an outlet for that approach, which he couldn't really take with his previous adaptations. But that's not all. Of course, working in animation, Snyder has complete control over what the movie looks like, which I'm sure is tempting for any director. But it's more than that. I think what Snyder saw in the Owl movie was an opportunity.
I need to pee quickly. I'll be right back. I'll leave you with a song again. Yeah, be right back. Bye. And I'm back. Okay. Uh Okay. Uh
Great when he taps into those die-hard sincere instincts. And I have to wonder if, on some level, the Owl movie was sort of an outlet for that approach, which he couldn't really take with his previous adaptation. I have to recent movies. Considering how Batman v Superman is maybe the most oppressively bleak and miserable superhero movie ever made, it's
Oh, he said superhero movie. Well, I guess there's an argument for that. I think so.
shocking how upbeat
Yeah.
and hopeful Snyder's Justice League is. There's an almost corny sincerity to some of it, particularly the stuff with Cyborg. And to be clear, I think this is good. The same goes for the father-daughter material in Army of the Dead, which is especially understandable given his recent family tragedy. And I have to admit, it's kinda great when he taps into those die-hard sincere instincts. And I have to wonder if, on some level, the Owl movie was sort of an outlet for that approach, which he couldn't really take with his previous adaptations. But that's not all.
Maybe. Maybe, but maybe it's just that he felt like he had to because it's a kid movie, the same way he maybe felt like he had to, and also like the studio kind of told him to. With Justice League after BVS, like one of the biggest criticism people had was that it was too dark, which is a bullshit criticism, but yeah.
Of course, working in animation, Snyder has complete control over what the movie looks like, which I'm sure is tempting for any director. But it's more than that. I think what Snyder saw in the Owl movie was an opportunity. Not just an opportunity to make 300 for babies, but an opportunity to tell his version of an Arthurian legend and the Knights of the Round Table, which, in the context of Snyder's career, is more important than you might think. Look, the truth is, I think everyone makes Snyder out to be more complicated than he really is. Whether it's people arguing that he's making evil, fascist, Ayn Rand-obsessed movies, or brilliant, complex pieces of art, I think it's way simpler than that. No, stop it. He's not. Look, if you want to understand the cinema of Zack Snyder, the truth is that you really only have to watch one movie. Well, okay, two movies, the Owl movie and one other. And this one is not a movie that Snyder directed. It is Excalibur, John Boorman's R-rated reimagining of the Arthurian legends, released in 1981 when Zack Snyder was 15 years old. Now, this is not some big secret I've uncovered. Snyder talks about it a lot. It was his main pick last year when he appeared on IMDb's Movies That Changed My Life podcast. And just look at the beginning of Batman v Superman. The movie theater The Wayne's Visit is advertising Excalibur opening next Wednesday.
Okay.
Which means that the true tragedy of Thomas and Martha's murder is that they never got to see it. This is a joke, by the way. Snyder fans, please don't take it seriously. Excalibur is made...
Who would be offended by that? Huh?
The most faithful King Arthur movie anyone has made. It tells the full story, from Merlin getting Excalibur from the Lady in the Lake, to Arthur pulling the sword from the stone, all the business with the Knights of the Round Table, and then all the way through to the quest for the Holy Grail, to Arthur's eventual death at the hands of his incestuous bastard son Mordred. John Boorman, who Snyder has said is his favorite director, here's a clip.
You know, probably John Boorman is my favorite director.
Leans all the way into the fantasy. This is, first and foremost, a myth, full of magic and larger-than-life heroes and villains set in a fantastical stylized version of medieval England, where suits of armor always have this impossible otherworldly glow. The whole movie is scored with the music of Richard Wagner and Karl Orff. The Knights of the Round Table ride into battle to the sounds of O Fortuna. This is operatic shit here. And while it's a faithful adaptation of the legendary stories, it is also very much a version aimed at adults. There is sex, and there is a whole lot of bloody violence. And so, it becomes very clear why Snyder likes it so much.
Sure.
Like, here are some quotes from him talking about it. The cool thing about this movie is that it's not a kid's movie. He's not interested in the bright and happy version of Knights. I was such a freak for fantasy horror things, that whole Frank Frazetta palette, and this movie has that. And guess when I come to a part in my movies where there's an opportunity for it to be gory, I say, okay, let's film that. It's not my aesthetic to use trickery to get around it. In Watchmen, I always felt the truth of being a superhero is that people frickin' get killed. And that's what Excalibur is violence because that's what it was like. Excalibur is an operatic myth about legendary heroes who also fuck and murder people, where the hero ultimately dies in battle.
I haven't seen Excalibur, but it sounds interesting. Yeah.
That is exactly what Snyder's entire filmography is. 300 retells a historical story as an ultra-violent myth, with an impossibly powerful king who has slow-mo sex scenes that look like a Chanel No. 5 commercial and ultimately dies on the battlefield. The Owl movie is about a legendary group of warriors, basically the Knights of the Round Table but owls, who hang out in a mythical realm. Ga'Hoole is basically Owl Camelot. Army of the Dead uses the music from the climactic scene of Excalibur multiple times, and in Sucker Punch, Snyder repurposed the actual suits of armor used in Excalibur for the sequence with the Knights at the castle. But Snyder's DC movies are probably where the Excalibur parallels are the most obvious. Superman...
Yeah, from what he like laid it out to be, I think that's true. Yeah, I think so.
Is kind of the closest thing we have to a modern-day King Arthur figure, a mythical saint-like hero whose exploits are legendary. And in Snyder's take, first of all, Superman is now a guy who murders his enemies in battle and has sex in the bathtub. The green glow that the sword Excalibur casts looks exactly like the kryptonite spear Batman makes. And then in Justice...
I mean, fucking hell. I mean, the Superman... Fuck, what was I? Superman snapping Zod's neck. That's really stupid. Like, he didn't have to at all. I mean, there's like, because the people that were quote unquote trapped by the laser eyes, Zod's laser eyes, they could have easily escaped. But if Superman just put his fucking hand over Zod's eyes, right, for a sec, like, he really didn't have to do that.
League, Batman assembling the members of the team might as well be the Knights of the Round Table being assembled. If you don't believe me, here's Snyder saying...
Wait, assembling is... okay.
Batman creating the Justice League could easily be King Arthur.
In some interviews where Snyder discussed his original plans for unmade Justice League sequels, he wanted Bruce Wayne to end up having an affair with Lois Lane. In other words, retelling the exact story of Lancelot and Guinevere from Excalibur. But maybe the most overt influence is the end of Batman v Superman, when Superman sacrifices himself in literally the exact...
For no fucking reason, but alright.
Same way that Arthur dies in Excalibur. As in, he stabs the villain, while he himself also gets stabbed, and they both die. The climax of the Owl movie is actually almost exactly the same, with Soren impaling Metalbeak on a spike. Because it's a kid's movie, Soren doesn't die, but if Snyder had had his way, I bet you he would. This whole thing of the hero of the story ultimately sacrificing themselves and dying in battle in a grand, dramatic fashion happens so much in Snyder's work that it gets a little weird. You have it at the end of Dawn of the Dead, first with CJ sacrificing himself and then Michael dying as the others escape on a boat, but it really starts with 300 and Leonidas dying dramatically in battle. Then in Watchmen, Rorschach's death is changed from the comic, so it's now a big dramatic sacrifice. Sucker Punch ends with Baby Doll sacrificing herself and getting lobotomized so that Sweet Pea can escape. And most recently, at the end of Army of the Dead, Scott Ward, the hero of the movie played by Dave Bautista, sacrifices himself so his daughter can escape. Knowing about Snyder's obsession
Okay, yeah, sure.
with Excalibur, it makes for an interesting experience going back and watching his Superman trilogy. Man of Steel is sort of a work-for-hire job, a project conceived by Christopher Nolan and David Goyer, focused on grounding Superman in a...
Alright. David Goyer, right? That explains a lot, too. Fuck that, dude. Holy shit.
real naturalistic world, which is not where Snyder's sensibilities tend to be, and then over the following films, as Snyder got more and more control, he steered this world and these characters into his own vision, until you arrive at Justice League, which is full operatic mythology. Like, in the making of documentary on the Justice League Blu-ray, it is wild how many times Snyder uses the word mythology.
Steeped in mythology, mythologically, with mythological mythology.
The movie is about a godlike group of warriors fighting off a magic invading force.
Oh god, I'm sorry, it's just such a bad movie. And I'm a bit checked out at this point. I want to finish the video a bit.
Thing is hyper stylized. It is the ultimate realization of his Excalibur fanboyism. I mean,
yeah, okay.
Motherbox in Justice League straight up quotes Merlin's most iconic line from Excalibur. The future has taken root in the present. In Excalibur, this happens at the moment
Holy
Arthur
shit.
is conceived.
The future has taken root in the present.
And in Justice League, it happens as Superman's resurrection is initiated.
The future has taken root in the present.
Where the line is immediately followed by what looks like a giant ejaculation. So basically, the same thing that's happening in the Excalibur.
Oh, true, dude. Yeah, also the penis parts in Man of Steel. Yeah, he yeah. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that at all, but yeah. He's got some pretty homoerotic imagery, I guess.
Scene. I came to comic books through my mother. I loved fantasy art. I loved Frank Frazetta. I went to boarding school. You weren't allowed too many posters up, and everything I set up was slightly inappropriate. Frazetta's naked girls, ripped up guys. The kids were like, what the hell? They had their Boy George posters up. I had crazy Frazetta. My mother saw I was into this comic called
Wow, how etchy.
Metal Magazine, so she got me a subscription. You could call it highbrow comics, but to me, that comic book was just pretty sexy. I had a buddy who tried getting me into normal comic books, but I was all like, no one is having sex or killing each other. This isn't really doing it for me.
Oh, dude. Oh, dude, that's so Snyder. Holy shit. Ah, yeah. He just never grew out of that, did he? Oh, man. Okay.
Well, we're just about at the end of our journey to Ga'Hoole. And by that, I mean our exploration of le cinéma du Zack Snyder. And as I draw my final conclusions, my ultimate take on the man's work, I want to warn you that what I'm going to say might sound a little weird coming from me. Like, usually I'm here going, hey, let's analyze movies and interpret meaning from them. So I apologize if this sounds a little anti-intellectual, but I think Zack Snyder's movies are not nearly as toxic and hateful as their detractors say, and also not nearly as smart and layered as their fans say. I think people who hate Zack Snyder and who love Zack Snyder are both giving him a bit too much credit. Because after giving this a
well, I haven't really heard a lot of this he's toxic, awful, whatever criticism. But sure. Okay. Yeah, I do think people give him too much credit. I think he's just, to me, he literally is just a guy smashing his toys against each other. Like, yeah.
A lot of thought. After rewatching the man's entire filmography, I have come to the conclusion that these movies are mostly pretty dumb. I don't think there is a coherent worldview or take on politics to get from these movies, because Zack Snyder doesn't really have that much to say. The worst thing that happened to him as a filmmaker was being called a visionary after he'd only made 2 movies, which I assume convinced him that he should try to make smart movies, instead of...
I mean, this is a bit like armchair psychology-ish, but I see where he's coming from. Yeah.
Ones that are just about people stabbing zombies in the head. The guy does not make nuanced movies that handle complex ideas with subtlety.
At all.
He's not really capable of it. When he tries to deal with nuanced material, like in Watchmen, his impulse to make everything look awesome all the time drowns out the ideas that are present and dumbs it all down. When he tries to say something nuanced about feminism, or the patriarchy in Sucker Punch, or politics and humanity in Batman v Superman, he constantly trips over his own feet, making the narratives needlessly convoluted and not communicating any ideas very clearly. Snyder has a simple set of things he's attracted to. Themes, aesthetics, story beats, and he will come back to them every single time. Even when he's adapting a character.
Yeah, he's a bit of a one-trick pony, I guess.
Like Batman, who has a nearly 100-year history and a wealth of source material to pull from, Snyder only goes to a single source, Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns.
Very true. Very true. And it's a good comic, but like Batman, and I like that depiction of Batman, as I said before, but Batman has so much more to offer. Yeah.
But instead of actually being interested in the themes and characterization and satire present in that book, it's really only a handful of images he latches onto. The older, more violent Batman, Batman fighting Superman in cool armor, Batman with a gun, Robin being dead, Superman sacrificing himself, and most of these are once again kind of reminiscent of Excalibur. I am genuinely glad that he got to finish his cut of Justice League, because it's clear in that movie, and with Army of the Dead, that Snyder has finally figured out who he's supposed to be. Justice League finally dropped the attempts at political drama and psychological complexity and got back to what Snyder really cares about. Mythological beings fighting monsters with swords. I don't want to see a Zack Snyder movie about Senate hearings. I want to see a Zack Snyder movie about...
The thing is, I'm so much more interested in a good version of BVS than in a good version of Justice League. Yeah. But that's me, I guess.
A zombie tiger eating people in Las Vegas. And the thing I have to mention is that by all accounts, he's a pretty cool guy. He's totally free of scandal, and all his collaborators seem to have a great time working with him. That whole thing where he stole hard drives of Justice League footage from Warner Brothers to finish it on his own, it kinda ruled. Like, he publicly called out the shitty YouTube channel Geeks and Gamers for their bigotry while on a live stream with them. After a whole bunch of
I'm not touching that. I haven't seen the clip. It's not. I don't care.
Came up about Chris D'Elia, Snyder removed him from Army of the Dead and digitally replaced him in post with Tig Notaro, a cool as hell move and a massive upgrade. And remember when the trailer for the Snyder Cut came out and it was set to Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, the song Snyder got a ton of shit for using in the sex scene in Watchmen, and then the trailer ended with Jared Leto as the Joker saying, "We live in a society." We live in a society. And that line wasn't even in the actual movie. Like, that was truly one of the funniest bits of trolling a director has done in recent memory. So
I guess you can see it like that. Sure. I just found it weird. Like, it felt more like pandering to me than trolling, but sure.
You know what? let's mention one more nice thing. The opening 10 minutes of Man of Steel is honestly pretty sweet. That's all. I just think it's cool. Zack Snyder is like the high school...
Again, like, make the argument. I'm begging you. Please. Sorry,
soccer coach who also teaches a history class, but in class he only really cares about the cool historical stories, and then he gets bored and goes, you know what guys, let's just watch Saving Private Ryan. He is our premier himbo auteur. And so as we end this journey, I would like to quote the final lines of Roger Ebert's 1981 review of Excalibur. Boorman's Excalibur is a record of the comings and goings of arbitrary, inconsistent, shadowy figures who are not heroes, but simply giants run amok. Still, it's wonderful to look at. He might as well be describing any Zack Snyder movie. And I think Snyder would like that. Well, we did it. We got through the Snyder video and didn't even have to split it into multiple parts. Huge relief. I should mention that I didn't put everything in here though. There's an extended cut with a whole extra section where I rank all of Snyder's movies and talk about each one, and you can only see that on Nebula.
Fucking Nebula, dude. Okay.
Nebula, of course, is the streaming service that I helped develop, which now has more than 500,000.
How come every fucking YouTuber who's on there says they helped develop it? Like, how many people were involved in that for a streaming service? Like, come on. Like, sorry.
Paying subscribers, just imagine you could be one of them. And this season, the Nebula versions of every episode I release will be an extended cut with a bonus section not available on YouTube.
It's also, like, this isn't really a criticism, but it's also kind of weird to call your videos episodes, right? Like, that's kind of weird.
Also worth mentioning, on Nebula, there are no ads. Also, better video quality than YouTube.
Yeah, no ads, but you pay for it, so I'd hope so, right?
The thing about Nebula is that it's not just the best place to watch my regular videos. Nebula is also the place where our more than 150 creators can experiment and make ambitious projects outside of the regular kind of stuff that we do on YouTube. And Nebula provides the budgets and production resources to make those happen. So, that time on the island and everything I've been...
Oh, is that new? I haven't heard that they provide budget. I guess that... But, like, you're once again, yeah, you're not, like, a slave to the YouTube algorithm, but you're a slave to, like, Nebula and their, like, interests, right? Like... Maybe you're more aligned with that, but it's not like it's just like this like YouTube seems more free to me because yeah, there's an algorithm you can take into account if you want to, but you don't have to. Like there's Timba, for example, Timba on Toast, he just does whatever the fuck he feels like, and I love it. I love him for it, and he doesn't have to put his videos on Nebula or whatever. Like, I don't know, that's kind of weird. That's kind of seems dishonest.
About with Other Me from a Parallel Universe, those are all references to Night of the Coconut, the feature-length film I released earlier this year that is streaming only on Nebula. That's right.
Oh, fuck you. Fuck you. All this, like, lore shit is from a movie you can't even see without paying for it? Fuck you. Oh, that makes me angry.
I made one too, and that's the only place you can watch it. And don't worry, the good news is that it barely costs anything, thanks to Nebula's partnership with CuriosityStream. As you might know, CuriosityStream is the great streaming service dedicated to nonfiction programming, with a library of thousands of great documentaries. Like, they have a whole section on medieval history, so you can learn more about the setting for Zack Snyder's favorite movie. If you sign up at curiositystream.com/PatrickHWillems, or click the link down there in the description, you get a subscription for CuriosityStream and a subscription for Nebula, together for only $14.79 for an entire year.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good price, but it's still just a paywall for your videos, and you're cutting out shit from your videos that if like fans want to see it, they have to pay for it. I'm not, like, just call it that. Like, I'm not a big fan of that in general, but if you're gonna do that, don't, like, beat around the bush with it.
To put that in perspective, that is less than the cost of purchasing 4 current comic books published by Marvel Comics. It takes about an hour total to read those 4 comics, and over here, you get a year's worth of entertainment. So sign up, watch the extended cuts of the videos, no more ads, also watch my movies so you're caught up on the new season, and that's all. Thank you for watching. We did it, folks. Goodbye.
There's still 4 minutes in this. I'm speeding it up again. 2x. Let's see.
Impressive stuff in there.
Well, how much did you save?
Just the ad read, but I love watching clients promote Nebula.
Wait, client? So does that mean...
That's right. Welcome back.
Wait. Something just flashed up there, didn't it? Going frame by frame for this. Sorry. It's so not important, but... Yeah. What the fuck is that? For like one frame as well? Why? He's got nice teeth though.
Patrick, so sorry for the late response. The shooting schedule for the film has it's been absolutely crazy. But enough about me. How are you? I heard you need a place to stay. Just take one of my apartments in the city. Mikasa is Sukasa. I'll text you the address. The key will be under the mat. You see what you get it? Yeah. Okay, listen, I got a jet, okay? I got a double Denis dinner date. That's Claire and Villeneuve. Ciao.
Is that New York?
What are you doing here? And that is it. We reached the end, and now it's the Patreon credits. And we thought it would be fun to showcase some fan art that people have sent in recently. This is meant to look like...
Okay, this is like... Yeah. I don't care. Okay, that's it for the stream today. I didn't hate that video, to be fair. It annoyed me in some aspects, but I didn't hate it. It was okay. Yeah. Next time, because I'm seeing here he has a follow-up video for that, so if I remember, then next time I'll just watch that. And yeah, thanks for the people who were here, and see you when I see you.